We all know there's a government shutdown. I wanted to come down here because there are a lot of federal employees that aren't furloughed, that are still working. And here at Elkton, we have about 320 employees that are in there working without pay. They're doing 8, 10, 12-hour shifts, keeping the public secure and not getting paid. This is obviously not getting paid has a tremendous effect on the families that are here. And, you know, I wanted to just come down and say hello and that we appreciate what they're doing because they're not sitting at home. They're still here working. It's about a $39 million economic impact for our community that's not being felt now because of the shutdown and the stalemate that we're in. And really, you know, I want to just make one point is that, you know, I think we've got to fix the process that, you know, whether you're for the wall or against the wall or wherever you fall politically, we have federal employees that are here keeping us safe. We need to create provisions where because of the importance of their job with securing 2,500 inmates here, that we've got to figure out a way to make sure these people get paid. And I would also just like to encourage the local community support systems, the banks, the credit unions, you know, people who are dealing with these employees to please take into account what they're going through right now. They're working, and you know, if they don't get paid here in the next week, there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to be able to pay their mortgage, aren't going to be able to pay credit card bills, really living paycheck to paycheck. So I hope that you know, the people in the community take that into account too.
Now, are they actually not being paid now? Are they being paid until like another week or two?
No, they're not. They didn't get paid. They got their last pay. If they don't get paid Monday, I think they're scheduled to get paid again. You know, there's going to be a lot of bills that aren't going to get paid in the process.
Okay, so when was the last time they were paid then?
I think it was end of December.
Yeah, they said Friday they won't get paid.
Their last check was the 3rd. Right.
The 3rd?
They received officially their
okay.
last check.
And you can check with those guys.
I don't know if they're able to go on camera, but what did they tell you?
Well, I just went around and talked, and I mean, you know, every person I met, you know, a couple of kids, 3 kids, child support, rent, mortgage. I mean, it's just, you know, it's having a huge effect on them, and they're worried because they're hearing, well, this may go on for months and months, and there's a lot of stress that comes with that. So again, they're showing up here, and what I was amazed with really the level of professionalism. They're here, they got their game face on, they're doing their job, they know how important it is. There's 2,500 people in this facility that they're protecting us from, that we certainly don't want out on the streets, so they're doing their job, but it's getting very, very stressful for them.
Why not, and we see on the president's side, give me what I want or I don't do anything. On the other side, we're not doing that. Mm-hmm. Why not, as a member, with now seniority on your side, why not take the high road and say, listen, let's come to the center here, work something out so that one side or the other doesn't have to feel like they won, you lost. Because that's what it seems right now. It seems like the extremes are insisting on their side and nothing in the middle.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why the government shut down, and we've dealt with this over the debt ceiling and a variety of other issues over the past few years. You know, my thing is, look, we want border security. I want border security. There's nobody that is more pro-border security than I am. I just disagree with how we do it. I'm saying use technology, use sensors, use an electric fence, use drones, use, you know, aerostats. There's a million different technologies that are out there. It's 2019 now. Let's use those. We agree on border security. We don't necessarily agree on the president's version of border security, so let's figure that out. And then let's also find a way to make the immigration system start to work. We can start processing people legally. That to me seems like a pretty reasonable position. And, you know, I mean, the president was ready to agree to it, and then he got a lot of blowback. I mean, remember a couple weeks ago he was saying, yeah, we're going to get a deal to extend the government funding, and then we'll work on a further deal. That's the thing. One of the things we're proposing is let's fund all of these other areas of the government till September, which would include Bureau of Prisons, which means these folks get paid. And the issue of border security, we'll fund that until February 8th and give us a month to have that fight. But let's get everything else off the table and get these folks paid here. That to me seems like a reasonable position to have.
What about the president using emergency status and emergency powers in order to grab funding for the wall? You think that's a possibility here, or?
I mean, I think he's going to have to make clear of the imminent emergency. You know, and what is that? I mean, you know, we've got a lot going on in the country. I think using members of the United States military that we've paid a lot of money, you know, sometimes to the tune of hundreds of thousands, if not $1 million, to train, to have them building, you know, a wall. That I want everyone to remember too, Republican senators in border states don't think the wall is a good idea. It's because we have technology, we have drones, we have aerostats, we have electric fences. We've got all kinds of different things. And the other point too we want to make is we hear about the drugs coming into the country. 90% of the drugs that come into this country come in through ports of entry where the cars come in and people come in. So why wouldn't we spend money where the 90% of the drugs are coming in? More dogs, more people down there searching better, less random, if we're going to stop the drugs from coming in. 50 to 60, sometimes 70%, depending on the study, of people who are undocumented and in the country overstay their visa. So these are the two biggest problems we have, and we're hung up on where 10% of the drugs come through and some 25 to 30% of people come through. Not that it doesn't need to be addressed, and I'm for it, but it's like this is disproportionately sucking the oxygen out of the room and ignoring where we could really be addressing border security.
Why not come up with a bill then to address and set aside money for those technologies, as you said, set aside XYZ dollars for these technologies that seem to work, and champion that publicly and see what the president responds.
Yeah, that's been my position since this started. That's been my position on border security for a long time. As I said on my speech on the House floor, like, I like cars, but I'm not for a Model T. I like planes, but I'm not for the glider that the Wright brothers built. And I like my phone, but I'm not for a rotary dial phone. Technology is advanced. We need to use it. It's in the best interest of the taxpayer. It's the best way to secure the border. So we're pushing that, and the president just keeps insisting, no, I want $5 billion for a wall. He couldn't get that through a Republican Senate right now. So to blame the Democrats for this is a distraction.
And this fight has become so ugly that it seems like it's divided Americans, where people are just for Trump and against Democrats. Mm-hmm. And is that something that really bothers you when it comes to how this fight has gone?
Yeah, I mean, I'm frustrated with the whole polarization because, as I said, there's ways to come to a yes conclusion here. I'm for border security. Most Americans are for a secure border. I don't understand people who aren't. I mean, this is a very important thing. We've got to know who's in the country. We've got to keep drugs out of the country, especially with the opiate epidemic that we're dealing with here. We've got a lot of interest on why we want to be able to do that, but it's just turned into a sideshow. And I hope that, I feel like we need to talk more as Democrats about being for border security and proposing what we're for, the technologies specifically that we're for, the electric fence, the aerostats, drones, whatever it is that we need to patrol and understand and secure our border. More people looking at the ports of entry, more people looking at cars coming in, more dogs sniffing the cars coming in. All of this is really important stuff that we're not talking about. We're talking about, the wall that's going to have a very minimal effect.
So you are actually encouraging members on your side of the aisle to come up with a plan,
yes,
to utilize these things.
Yeah.
Now,
but
yeah.
How is this divide going to ever get back to getting people back to work? I mean, it seems like, the political side of it is so divided that it's lost in getting government back to work.
Yeah, we're in a really unique time, and it's an unfortunate time that the country is so polarized that we're continuing to have fights. You know, and I would like to see the president do a better job of bringing the country together, not be so interested in fighting so much. I think sometimes he thrives off of this, you know, the conflict, and you know, that's politics, but you know, you're the president. Your job at the end of the day is to bring people together. You have a Democratic House, you have a Republican Senate, you're a Republican. You're not going to get everything you want. I'm not going to get everything I want, whether I'm at home or at the office. It just doesn't work that way.
And in the meantime, there's people that aren't going to be able to feed their families.
Well, I think when the president says it's going to go on months and months and months, it's disrespectful to these workers who you don't need you throwing gasoline on the fire. You know, for him to say, "Oh, these people are for me and for this," it's like it's about them. It's about, you know, people working 16 hours a day and not getting paid, but it's also about starting to build some confidence on what can we work together on. I mean, we're acting like a third world country here. We're supposed to be the world superpower. China's breathing down our throat. We still have economic insecurity. We have all these issues, and we're dealing with something that just, you know, it seems as a distraction. You know, when you can agree on 90% of something, with border security, with technology, with immigration reform and all that stuff, most people, if you sit them down on a couple of bar stools, you'd be able to hammer out a deal. And I feel like the president needs to do a better job of bringing us together.
Just out of kind of speculation here, should this continue, the shutdown continue, you know, what are the prospects of getting the House and Senate support for overriding a presidential veto? Is that a possibility in your eyes? I mean, do you see enough? If this begins to really stink over the next couple of weeks and folks aren't getting back to work and missing paychecks, what are the prospects of something like that? The House and Senate compromise bill without a wall? Or?
It could be possible. You know, when the heat gets turned up, who knows? Deals come together rather quickly, the more pressure from the outside, but I don't know. It'd be tough for me to see. You know, the president's pretty dug in on this position, and I think a lot of the Republicans are. I heard Vice President Pence is up on the Hill today talking to Republican senators to kind of keep them in line. And many of those senators some are up for re-election in the next year or two. So I think it would be hard for them to cross the president at this point.
Well, how hard, as you said, both extremes seem dug in here. At what point does the pressure get turned up? Are you hearing, for example, from your constituents one way or the other on this? Why can't you solve this, or, you know, keep going? I mean, at what point do members, whether in the House or the Senate, start feeling pressure here?
Time will tell. I mean, we're through the holidays now. You know, people are back in D.C. I think it's starting to hit home. You're seeing people that are actually working. This is the worst case scenario here. These people aren't sitting at home. They're actually working. So it's not like they can go out and get a side job. They're here, you know, 12 hours a day. So I don't know. I mean, time will tell. I mean, but hopefully we can get something resolved this week.
Right now, funding's going to run out also for district courts here.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot.
Maybe in the next week a little bit if they can work something out, but there's going to be a heck of a lot more people.
Yeah, I think, you know, if things don't get resolved this week, then I think as we move into next week, it's going to get harder and harder to.
But just to clarify, you would even encourage your own leadership, whether it's the speaker or others, to come up with their own plan, to come forward with whatever plan, whether it's technology.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the plans we've offered have made these investments. They're just saying not for a wall. Border security for sure, and all of these other elements of it we're for. And it's just the wall. So if your point is we need to achieve border security, we're all in agreement. Then you fight about, well, how do you do it? And if we're just saying that we don't want this, but here are all of these other things that we're for, it seems like a sticking point that, you know, we should be able to get through. But you know, that's not the reality we're in now.
Does the president own this shutdown at this point?
No, his own words. This is his. from the meeting he had in the Oval Office.
Tim, what are the chances, since these people are coming to work, that when this is over, is there any chance for retroactive pay for them?
Yeah, I mean, history has been these folks will get paid, but the problem is if you can't pay your bills, you go get a short-term loan to pay. You got to pay interest on it. You're paying interest only, or you're paying, you're not paying your credit card bills off that you maybe ran up a little bit over the holidays, thinking you'd pay it off. So it's still a squeeze for them.
As far as Speaker Pelosi, is it just politics, or do you expect any reprisals from her?
For me trying to
Yeah. Run against her
get her
in the past.
removed, yeah. There's been no reprisals
Okay.
at this point. I'm moved up seniority on my committees. I'm actually chairing a subcommittee on appropriations now on the legislative branch, which funds all of the legislative operations. So there's been no reprisal.
So you're doing fine.
Doing fine. You can check with Bertram D'Souza on that if you want to get any further
Now,
information.
you said hopefully we can get something done, resolved this week. If we don't get something resolved this week, it's going to get harder and harder, meaning it's going to get harder and harder for it to be resolved, or it's going to get harder and harder for people?
It's going to get harder and harder for people. It's going to start to have an effect on the economy. The district courts, some of these other things that have been mentioned will be uncertain. And, again, you're going to have corrections officers all over the country in the Federal Bureau of Prisons not getting paid, working 12, 14 hours a day. I mean, how long are they going to stay? Some of the newer people who aren't yet really vested in the retirement fund, I mean, if this goes on for a month, 2 months, I mean, they may bail. And then where are you at? Their staffing levels here are already low. They already have people that are supposed to be teaching classes that are now augmenting the security piece. So I think it's going to get harder and harder for these folks, and I think that will put more pressure on Congress to act and the President to act.
Has there been an issue inside when you were talking to folks of absenteeism?
No.
Or threats of that?
No.
I'm not going to do this if I don't get paid?
No.